Let me talk about this real quick. I need to really touch on this right here because I noticed that a lot of Africans, our brothers, our sisters, they see this and they witness it and they really figured out that they're not going to repeat the foolishness that we've repeated over and over again, right? And I made a video about this, 60 seconds. It was very much to the point. And I know I probably hurt some feelings when I was talking about this, but I had to talk about it because my FYP it's pretty bad. I constantly see people who you necessarily won't see them start a conversation up with you about these subjects, about black people being indigent, um, and having some sort of anomaly over rights and culture and things like that. So I said, let me talk about this, right? Let me talk about this. Some of us we have siblings, right? And we're probably the only dark skinned siblings. Some of us, all our siblings are dark skinned, and we're the only dark skinned one. Or some of us, uh, may be the light skinned sibling, and we have a bunch of dark skinned siblings. It just depends, right? Um, Africans are not going to make this mistake. They're not going to make that mistake. Um, I heard a guy named Gummy talk about this on TikTok, and he was like, you notice like how the maroon woman is forced to have children with the octoroom and the quadroom and the mulatto repeatedly, right? And so much to the point where in America you don't see the maroon with the maroon. You don't see those two people together. You don't see the woman who is dark skinned with the male who's dark skinned. You don't see that. And you don't see them making babies. In fact, when you go on certain channels on TikTok, you always see the dark skinned woman with the high yellow child, and you see the high yellow woman with the high yellow children, right? So they know how to produce with their own. The dark skinned woman doesn't know how to do that. And this is, I said, let me talk about this, right? Because I said, he sees what I see. He sees what I see, right? Um, I don't know why it's like that. I don't know why it's like that. Um, but you can go to the point where you will see things like this, right? And you'll see the subject line will be about copper color. Like we have to fight to keep Africans off our land. And it's like Africans haven't been oppressing you for the last 100 years. It's been Europeans. It's been Europeans who've been oppressing you. So that type of neglect and that type of dishonesty, it drove me away from having to say that I'm American. It drove me away. Um, I figured out that in order to be honest about things, right, I have to be honest about what I see. And the brother Gami, I think he was deported um, because I think some people call ICE on him, and it's like, how do you call ICE on someone who came over here via plane, which means that they probably had all their information together, whatnot. Or he probably didn't renew his visa. I don't know. Um, but they call ICE on him and he was deported. And these were black people who did this. These were black people who did this. So-called black people, right? Because a lot of them don't want to be called black, right? They want to be called Indian. And it goes back to like this whole thing about classism. White people came over here and subjected themselves to assimilation, right? Where they mixed with black men who was having children by the droves, right? You hear about Harlem, the Renaissance, where they were having children with black men, right? And these black men were having biracial children, and they were turning into octoroons and melungeons, and this is what was going on. And the women were doing these things too with the white males. So now you have people who are melungeon, octoroon, mulatto, quadroon, griff. That's that term they like to use, griff. It means griffy. This is what they've been doing all this time, right? They've been calling them the Indians. And the dark-skinned people have been being called the slaves, the Africans who come over here on boats. So they switch places with you, right? So this is what's been going on. They don't have a camaraderie with Africans at all. There's always a fuss about who started hip hop, who started blues, who started jazz. And it's like all of that is African culture. Like, have we forgotten? The cymbals, the snares, the drum, all of that is African. All of that is African. Even down to the language that's used. The language is Phoenician. That's African. So when we go back and look over the decades and see how people came to be, and you start to see like, okay, well, what was Africa in the 1700s? Well, what was America in the 1800s? A lot of people don't know where America was in the 1900s. But you can kind of see the evolution when you look at the black and white films. You can kind of see Big Mama, right? Big Mama was very black. She was dark skinned. She was in the field bathing the yellow children, the white children, and the black children. She was bathing them. She was breastfeeding them. So it's like, I've always kind of been regretful to kind of like expound on certain feelings until now. And I felt like it was needed. I don't really see a point being made in having to disagree with Africans all the time. If they want to be copper color and you want to be copper color, that's fine. But I don't really see the point in expressing the concern over how much inclusion Africans really have. Because when you think about it, right, when you see these people talk, they're really painting themselves as colorists. They're really painting themselves as xenophobes. They're painting themselves as xenophobes. They don't want anything to do with Africa. They don't want anything to do with Africans. And I was just saying this. I'm like, you don't think the people in Detroit would rather live in Rwanda? Let's think about this for a second, right? These countries have upgrades in transportation, upgrades in agriculture. You live in America, you're going to struggle with some type of diabetes or some type of obesity. You're going to struggle with it. You're not going to struggle with that stuff in Africa. You know what I mean? Like, you're probably going to struggle with other things, but you're not going to struggle with obesity, because the way that they use their seeds, and the fact that they have the sun on their lands, on some of the land masses, with the exceptions of a few states, they have the sun year round. America, right? You in the house most of the months because of the cold winter, the cold fall. You in the house. So I think, like, some people will come around to the idea of being African. Some people will come around to the idea of working with Africans. And some just won't. And I feel bad for those who won't, for a number of reasons. But mainly the typical reason is that, yeah, I'm making a video. I'll be down. But the main reason that I kind of see that they'll be neglectful is that they won't see the bigger picture. They won't see the bigger picture and what it would mean to like bring everybody together. You know, it's sad, really. It's really sad, you know, because I grew up that way, thinking that everybody was going to be kumbaya. But I was kind of misinformed. I was kind of gullible, thinking that everybody would be kumbaya. And I'm glad that I learned the lessons that I did, because I didn't fall for the tricks. Because if I fell for the tricks, I'll be 35, 36, being regretful, you know, not being responsible. When you take time to issue out things and you start to see things for what it is and you learn from it, everything becomes serious and you take it seriously. You don't just push it to the side. So that's all I want to say about that, was that a lot of people who are dark skinned are seeing what's happening right now, and they're seeing how they should react, you know, with all the FYPs, with all the videos, the shorts of people who saying xenophobic things about Africans. We're starting to see now which side we should be on. And it's not hard to figure that out. So that's all I want to say. Great peace, Yakoki.